The call came at 6:42 a.m. on a gray Wednesday morning, and I was already awake, standing in my kitchen in Mississauga holding a mug of coffee and watching snow drift past the window when my phone lit up with my brother's name Eric, and my stomach tightened because we had not spoken in almost a month, not since our last strained visit to our mother's care facility. Nathan, his voice carried a forced calm that immediately set off alarms. I need to tell you something difficult. Mom passed away overnight. Peacefully I felt the cup tremble in my hand. What do you mean passed away? I was going to see her today. He did not answer that. Instead he went on brisk and clipped, the service is Saturday. I have already handled everything. And before I could respond he added, one more thing about Mom's estate. The will is very clear. Everything is left to me, the house, the lake property, the investments, all of it. You are not included, and do not bother contesting it. Then the line went dead. I stood there frozen, my mother supposedly gone, and my brother's first instinct was not comfort but a warning. Something felt deeply wrong. So let me rewind. My name is Nathan Cole. I am 65, a retired structural engineer who spent 4 decades working on public projects across southern Ontario. My wife Laura died 4 years ago after a long illness, and we had one son, Daniel, who is now 30, living in Halifax working offshore. After Laura passed, my mother became my anchor. My brother Eric is 6 years younger, 59, a mortgage broker, married with 2 grown kids. We were close as boys, street hockey, scraped knees, but adulthood pulled us apart. Eric always chased the next deal, the next upgrade, and I had heard whispers over the years about debts, about his wife working extra shifts to cover gaps. Our mother Margaret was 86, sharp, independent, a former librarian who did crossword puzzles in pen, and lived alone in her Oakville bungalow until about 10 months ago when Eric insisted she needed help. He convinced her to sign power of attorney, saying it was just for convenience, bills, appointments, nothing more. And soon after that everything shifted. Suddenly she was labeled severely demented. Eric moved her into a private care home, Cedar Pines. When I visited I barely recognized her. She stared through me, spoke in fragments, did not know my name. I asked the attending physician, Dr. Alan Price, how this was possible when she had been lucid weeks earlier. He said cognitive decline can accelerate quickly, but it never sat right with me. I visited anyway several times a week, holding her hand, talking even when she could not respond. Eric came less often, always in a rush, and now standing alone with my brother's threat echoing in my ears. I called Cedar Pines directly and asked about my mother. The nurse paused, then said, Mr. Cole, your mother is alive. She is eating breakfast right now. I sat down hard and asked them not to tell anyone I had called, especially my brother. Then I phoned my son and told him everything, and he said quietly, Dad, that sounds like elder abuse. You need to act. I spent the morning calling professionals, first a lawyer I knew from past work disputes who told me flat out if Eric was misusing POA this could be criminal, but I needed proof. Then I hired a private investigator, a woman named Julia Reyes, who arrived that afternoon, listened carefully, and said she had seen this pattern before: sudden diagnosis, sudden isolation, sudden control. Give me 2 days. That night I went to see my mother unannounced, and for the first time in months she seemed more present. Her eyes focused for a moment when I said my name, but before she could speak a nurse interrupted and the moment vanished. Driving home through falling snow I realized Eric might be planning something outrageous, announcing her death to move assets while she was still alive. The next morning Julia called and told me my brother had drained nearly $300,000 from our mother's account, sold her lake cabin to a numbered company, likely his, and that the doctor who diagnosed her had been Eric's university roommate for decades. She suspected medication-induced impairment over sedation to create dementia on paper, and urged me to document everything. That afternoon when I returned to Cedar Pines my mother was gone. A nurse said my brother had taken her out for fresh air. My heart dropped. I ran to the lot, but his car was gone. Calls went unanswered. Hours later he returned, helping her back inside. She looked exhausted, disoriented, and when he saw me standing there his face hardened and he said my name like it was an inconvenience rather than a brother. What are you doing here? He snapped. You said Mom died yesterday and yet here she is. He actually laughed like it was nothing. Oh, that, yeah, sorry about the mix-up, meant to call you back. False alarm. She had a bad episode yesterday. Dementia does that sometimes. Where did you take her today? Just for a drive. She likes getting out, really, because she can barely stand. He stepped closer, his voice turning cold. Back off, Nathan. I have power of attorney. I decide her care, not you. If you don't like it, get a lawyer. Then he brushed past me, guiding Mom into her room, speaking to her in a low voice I couldn't hear before walking away without even a glance. I was heading out when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Something made me answer. Hello. Silence, then a faint, strained woman's whisper. Nathan, it's me. Who is this? It's your mother. My chest locked up. That was impossible. She was right there, and the call was from a blocked number. Listen carefully, she said. I don't have much time. Come to my room tonight after 10. Make sure Eric isn't here and don't tell anyone. The line went dead. I stood in the parking lot, snow falling, staring at my phone because that voice, even weak, had been hers, the real one. I waited until after 10 watching the building. Eric's car gone, night staff only. I slipped in through the side door and went to her room. She was sitting up, lights low, and when she looked at me her eyes were clear, sharp, lucid. Close the door, she said in a normal steady voice. My hands shook. Mom. What? Sit down, sweetheart, we need to talk. I asked if she was okay and she smiled, that familiar knowing smile from when we were kids sneaking cookies. I'm fine, Nathan. Eve been fine the whole time. The dementia, the confusion, I was acting, the room spun acting. She took my hand firm, strong. I needed to know something, she said. Which of my sons would love me? Without expecting anything. When Eric suggested power of attorney, I agreed, but I also spoke to my own lawyer and moved most of my assets into a trust before he touched anything. I left enough to see what he'd do. I couldn't even process it. Why not tell me? Because I had to see who would come, who would stay, even when I pretended not to know them. And you came every week, you held my hand even when I gave you nothing. Tears ran down my face. Of course I did. And Glenn, she shook her head, he failed worse than I imagined. I recorded everything, every threat, every paper, every dollar he took. The 280000 was bait. I let him think he was winning. I told her he announced her death and planned a funeral. She nodded. He told me today, said I'd have an accident, wanted signatures first, he's desperate now. I said we had to call police. She said not yet, your lawyer is mine too, we have a plan, trust me. And I did. Over the next 2 days we worked quietly, police involved, discreetly, hidden cameras, staff cooperation. Mom kept acting confused. Glenn came again, pushing papers. Then Thursday night he brought a syringe. The footage made me sick. He said it was medication, it was enough sedative to kill. She pretended to take it and he stroked her hair, saying tomorrow you'll finally be at peace, Mom. And that's when I knew this wasn't about greed anymore, it was about survival. No more suffering. Friday morning arrived and Eric had gone all in, booking a funeral home in Markham, sending notices, calling relatives, cousins I barely remembered, phoned me with condolences, and I played along, said yes. The service was at 2. Yes, it was sudden. The chapel was full, flowers everywhere, a large framed photo of my mother from years ago, smiling, healthy, and Eric had even written an obituary about a beloved parent after a long illness. I sat in the front row with my son, who flew in that morning, while Eric sat across the aisle with his wife and children, his face perfectly mournful. At exactly 2 he stood, took the podium, adjusted the mic, and began praising her life, her career, her trust in him, saying she knew he was the responsible one, the one meant to inherit and manage everything. And that was when I stood and asked loudly where she really was. Confusion spread. Eric went pale, told me to sit down, said the body was being cremated, but I said the crematorium had no record. And at that moment the doors opened and my mother walked in slowly with a walker, eyes sharp, police behind her. The room exploded, gasps, crying, shock. She stopped in front of Eric and said clearly, I am not dead, but your inheritance is. Glenn tried to claim she was confused, but she announced she had recorded everything, threats, theft, drugs, papers, and the officers arrested him on the spot. He tried to run, failed, screamed that he needed the money, and she told him calmly he stopped being her son the moment he valued her bank account over her life. The case dragged on, but the evidence was overwhelming: video, audio, bank records, even the doctor testified. Glenn pleaded guilty, got 5 years prison, restitution, fines, lost his license. His wife divorced him, took the kids. The doctor lost his medical license. My mother moved into a small condo near me, volunteered helping other seniors, and together we founded a fund to fight elder abuse. One winter night, sitting together watching snow fall, I asked if she regretted testing us, and she said she regretted that it was necessary, but not learning the truth, because love shows up even when there is nothing to gain, and that is what family really is. And in the end I gained something far greater than inheritance. I gained more real years with my mother and the certainty that when tested I chose integrity over blood.